This video will contain spoilers through the end of Chapter 4 of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Watch at your own risk.
Let them come. They know not who we are.
Mòrag Ladair, Special Inquisitor of the Empire of Mòrag, driver of Brigid, the Empire's most powerful blade, bearer of the title of Flamebringer, 4th permanent party member, and all-around badass. But what is up exactly with the names of her whipsword arts? Now, multiple party members do have a specific theming to their art names. For example, Nia's use animal names a lot, Tora's very much sound like a Napon named them, and a lot of Mòrag's arts on other weapons have very royal-sounding connotations, and there's a running theme of dragons with her too. But her whipsword arts all have the same thing on them that isn't tied into any of the other themes she has going on with her arts and other weapons. Even though her in-battle voice clips don't call these out, all 4 of her whipsword arts have the prefix Azure2:, and yes, that's a 2 and not an IL, as you'll see in a minute. When you first get her for the Patroka and Mikhail fight, you might be very confused as to what any of this stuff means, but actually, believe it or not, the cutscene right after defeating them is what explains all of this, as well as a little other bit of information that you'll see later on. In the cutscene after the battle, where Rex finishes them off and kills their blades, he instructs Mòrag to try to back them up underneath a specific area of the battlefield where Mithra can hit them with a sacred arrow safely. When she does that, she says,
Azure Striker, form the second! Radiance!
So there, already, you know what Azure 2 stands for. It's shorthand for Azure Striker form the second. You could come up with a couple in-universe and out-of-universe explanations for why she doesn't say the Azure Striker form the second every single time she uses the art. Out-of-universe, it's most likely that would take up too much time in the heat of battle and cause the voices to overlap each other even more, since the amount of time it would take to say that is longer than the execution time for a couple of the arts. And in-universe, you could say that she was putting more power into it that time and used the full name of the art to, like, psych herself up and charge up more ether energy into it or something. But that's not what we're here for. We know the name, but why are her whipsword arts and her whipsword arts alone called that? The answer to this question is actually pretty intuitive, but in order to come up with it, you do need 2 more pieces of information. The first is her voice clip when activating her level 4 special with Brigid, which sounds like this.
Brigid, form the third! Roger that, Lady Mòrag. Blue flame, heed my call. Dance! Soulfire!
Okay, so now we know that there is also a form the third, and presumably there's a form the first in there as well somewhere, since there's a 2 and a 3, there better be a 1 at some point. But the other piece of information is not found out until a later chapter, and it isn't a cutscene, so I'm not gonna show that off because it would spoil something past Chapter 4, but the information itself is a very minor plot point and isn't really a spoiler. That information is that Brigid's core crystal is passed down through the royal family of Mòrag as a sort of heirloom, and most of her past drivers, it's implied even all the way back to the Aegis War 500 years ago in one flashback cutscene too, were members of that royal family. Mòrag is related to the current emperor, so this makes sense and holds true even through to the present day. In the same cutscene, the idea of blades writing journals or diaries in order to keep track of their memories between awakenings is also brought up, and the fact that, yeah, usually when a driver dies, it's in battle, so the journal the blade had is gonna probably not be kept with the blade's new driver, but since Brigid and her core crystal are regarded as national treasures, her journal was being passed down as well. So there are memories of a lot of her old drivers in an extant form as well. Put that together with the fact that being Brigid's driver is what grants Mòrag the name Flamebringer, and you could sort of see where this comes from. From what I can tell, Azure Striker is the name of a very specific whipsword fighting style developed by the royal family of Mòrag throughout the generations, recorded in Brigid's notebook, and presumably taught by her to every new driver, or possibly by some sort of apprentice of the old driver whenever they die. We don't see any other whipsword blades in the game, so it is possible that Brigid's the only one. If that's the case, she would have to be the one teaching the style, but if that isn't, it's also possible that every previous driver trains at least one other whip sword wielder in order to instruct their next protege with Bridget, because you can't have an old driver of Bridget teach a new one, because that doesn't work unless people can come back from the dead or something, I don't know. But in this Azure Striker style, there are at least 3 forms, which I'm thinking are some sort of stance or guard while using the swords. Form the second is what's used for all 4 of Mòrag's driver arts, and the similarity between all of them is that she's the one holding the swords, and the swords are in whip mode instead of sword mode. So I'm thinking that Form the second is the stance where you have the swords in whip mode, and the driver is the one holding them to use driver arts. Form the third, we can see, the swords are both in whip mode, but Mòrag holds one and Bridget holds one. So I'm starting to think that Form the third is the stance where the swords are in whip mode, but Bridget holds one and the driver is holding one. I guess that would be what would be used for some of the Blade specials, even though Bridget kind of takes control for most of them. I don't know if there's a Form the fourth or something, but there has to be a Form the first, and who really knows what that is because it's never specified. My best guess is that Form the first is when the swords are in just regular sword mode and are being used as basically dual rapiers, and either the driver or Bridget is holding them. So Form the first would be what's used for Mòrag's regular auto attacks and stuff, as well as Bridget the one time you fight her alone when she's using the swords herself. She does use a couple of the specials as more powerful attacks, or basically her equivalent of driver arts, but her auto attacks are also just doing the regular stabby stabby slashy slashy with the thing, so that makes sense at least to me. That, or Mòrag's just a really big Gunvolt fan. Until next time, when hopefully I'll remember to actually play a Gunvolt game myself, this is Luxon, signing off.